Okay, so I'm always trying to perfect my recipes, and I showed you how to make bread that I had seen somebody do on YouTube. However, I'm gluten free, dairy free, and I just kind of like things a certain way. So I'm always trying to perfect recipes for myself and my family. So today I'm going to show you how I finally got to the recipe that I use for my bread. And I use gluten-free flour, 3 cups of gluten-free flour, and 2 teaspoons of active yeast, which is already in here, 1.5 to 2 cups of water, 1 teaspoon of sea salt, 1 teaspoon of coconut sugar, 2 teaspoons of extra virgin olive oil divided. So what I do first is I put 1.5 cups of water, hot water if you can. If you can't heat your water up, cold water is fine. It will work still. So 1.5 cups of hot water, and I put 2 teaspoons of active yeast in here and 1 teaspoon of coconut sugar. Mix it up really good and just let it sit until it gets, let me see if I can show you here, until it gets like this. It's very foamy and puffy, and that's what you want because you know the yeast is working. So once it gets like that, then you want to start adding it to your flour. And your flour, you want to add your sea salt. Say 1 teaspoon of sea salt, but I always feel like that's a little too much, so I usually end up adding less. But the sea salt, this is 1/4 teaspoon, so maybe I'll just do 3/4 of sea salt. Adjust it to your liking. You don't want too much sodium, but it's necessary to keep things working in here. So that just kind of mix it in with the flour. And then you want to take your yeast. I just kind of give it a quick mix before I put it in. And you just want to kind of mix while you're pouring it in so it gets really blended. And when it's almost completely blended, then I add 1 teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil. And I said 2 teaspoons of extra virgin olive oil divided. So 1 teaspoon is going to go in the dough like that. And the other teaspoon you're going to use on the dough once you've formed it into your ball to let it sit, because that helps prevent cracks from forming. So 1 teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil in the flour mix. And you just want to keep, man overboard. And you want your dough to be really soft and pliable and almost a little sticky. And that's going to be fine because you're going to use some extra flour. So always have a little bit extra flour. I have like 1/2 cup here because you're going to need to spread it out on your board and keep your hands floured and flour your bowl to sit it back in. Although some people use olive oil on the bottom of the bowl, but I use flour. Alright, so if you can see that, it's very sticky, but very pliable. So what we're going to do is scrape this off the spoon. Okay, so we're just gonna let this sit for about an hour until it almost doubles in size. So I'm gonna cover it. Make sure it's in a warm spot. This whole house is warm because it's very humid today. And I'm gonna let it rise for an hour and then we'll be back. Okay, so I also wanna do a little tip here while I'm waiting for my bread to rise. Bread flour, along with all other groceries, the cost has soared these days. So what I do is I buy a huge 25-pound bag of flour. And see my little machine over there? That does this. And, oops, I should put it down there. So what I do is measure out exactly what I'm going to need for flour into this food saver storage bag. So I do little over 3 cups, about 3 1/4 cups, 3 1/2 cups ish in the bag, because I'll need 3 cups for the flour and then 1/4 to 1/2 cup to when you're rolling, when you're kneading the dough and everything. So you want a little extra flour. So I put it in these bags, it seals it nice and tight, and you can store it for, I'll store it for up to a year anyways, but I say that, I usually end up going through it. But that way you're saving, because especially when you're buying gluten-free bread, it can cost like $7 a loaf. And doing it this way, it reduces your cost down to about $4 a loaf. So it's almost half of what it would cost you to buy it in the store. Now, not everybody's going to want to make their own bread. I love doing stuff like this. So anyways, that's what I do. It definitely is a cost saver. And yeah. Okay, so this has been rising for about an hour now. If you can see, it's actually pretty doubled in size. So you just want to put some of that flour on the cutting board or on your countertop or wherever you're gonna do this. And I just kind of roll it out. And it's going to be sticky, so you're going to want flour on your hands, and you're going to kind of flour the bread dough a little bit. You want to kind of punch it down, they say. That's what it's. And again, you want to make sure you keep flour on it, and you just keep rolling it. Keep your hands floured. Be nice and pliable like this. And this is not, traditional flour has gluten in it. So the more you work it, the tougher it gets. And then I guess it doesn't rise as well. I don't know. I don't really cook with regular flours too much. But with gluten-free flours, you don't have to worry about that because there's no gluten in it. And a lot of the time when I'm baking gluten-free, I'll add what's called psyllium husk. And that gives it that pliability like gluten. But you don't really have to do that with this. All right, and once you get it shaped into a ball, try to get it so that there's no cracks on the top. If there are, it's okay because you're going to put some olive oil on it. So you want to grab some parchment paper. Put it right on top of the parchment paper. And put it inside your bread pan. this is where the other teaspoon of olive oil comes in. You might not need quite a teaspoon at this point. But you want to put it all over the top of the bread and kind of rub it around. And this prevents the bread from cracking as much. Keeps the top nice and smooth, and also gives it a nice browning effect. Then you put it in a 400-degree oven for about 30 minutes, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. And here's the final loaf of bread, and it's been cooling for about 30 minutes on the rack. It looks really delicious. I cannot wait to toast up those 2 pieces I just cut off. And I hope you enjoy the recipe too. So like and subscribe, and you'll get hit the notification bell, and you'll get all my new videos that I post as I post them. Have a great day.